Picture this. It's the end of a long week. You're genuinely exhausted. Your body is tired, your mind is tired. Every sensible part of you is saying, just rest. You've earned it. So you sit down and do nothing. You watch something mindless and just exist for a bit. And then it starts. That quiet voice, that low hum of discomfort in your chest. You should be doing something. You're wasting time. Other people are out there, working, building, achieving. What is wrong with you? And suddenly the rest doesn't feel like rest anymore. It feels like failure with a blanket on. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because that guilt you feel when you're doing nothing, it didn't come from nowhere. It was installed into you. And today I want to show you where it came from, why it's lying to you, and how to actually rest without your brain making you pay for it. Let's get into it. Where the guilt comes from. To understand why rest feels like guilt, you have to understand where the guilt came from in the first place. And the honest answer is, most of us were taught from a very young age that our worth is tied to our output. Think about it. From the moment you started school, you were being evaluated on what you produced. Grades, homework, performance, results. The implicit message was clear. Doing things makes you valuable. Not doing things makes you lazy. And that message didn't stop at school. It followed you into work culture, into social media, into the endless highlight reels of other people's productivity. Hustle culture turned busyness into a personality trait. Being busy became a badge of honor. Ask someone how they are, and they'll say, busy. As if that's the answer, as if that's the goal. Somewhere along the way, rest stopped being a biological need and started being something you had to earn. And the cruel part is you intellectually know that rest is important. You can read all the studies, you can nod along to every wellness article, and still feel guilty the moment you actually stop. Because the guilt isn't rational, it's conditioned. It's a program that was running long before you were old enough to question it. Understanding that doesn't fix it immediately, but it does change the relationship you have with the feeling. The guilt isn't the truth, it's just old software. The productivity identity trap. Here's a deeper layer to this that I think is really worth sitting with. For a lot of people, the guilt around rest isn't just about productivity as a value, it's about identity. If you've spent years defining yourself by what you do, by your output, your hustle, your grind, then stopping feels like more than just taking a break. It feels like losing yourself. Who am I if I'm not working? What's my value if I'm not producing? What do I have to offer if I'm just resting? This is the productivity identity trap, and it catches incredibly hardworking, capable people the hardest, because the more you've achieved through relentless effort, the more your brain starts to believe that the effort is what makes you worthy. Rest becomes a threat, not to your to-do list, but to your sense of self. Brené Brown talks about this in the context of what she calls the hustle for worthiness. The exhausting belief that we have to keep earning our right to exist comfortably. And the cruel irony is that the people who need rest the most, the ones who have been driving hardest, giving most, pushing longest, are often the ones who feel the guiltiest taking it. Because their identity is most deeply tied to the doing. The rest feels like proof of something they're terrified is true, that without the hustle, there's nothing there. There is, but you can't see it when you won't stop moving long enough to look. What rest guilt is actually costing you. Let's talk about what this guilt is actually doing to you, because it's not harmless. When you feel guilty while resting, you don't actually rest. You sit on the sofa, but your nervous system stays activated. You lie in bed, but your mind keeps running the taps. The body is still, the brain is not. And that means you get the worst of both worlds. You're not being productive, and you're not actually recovering. You lose the time, and you don't get the restoration. That's not a trade-off. That's just a loss. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, author of Why We Sleep, talks about how the brain consolidates memory, processes emotion, and restores executive function during genuine rest and sleep. But genuine rest requires a nervous system that has actually downregulated, that has actually let go. Rest with guilt doesn't do that. Rest with guilt is just stillness with anxiety. And anxious stillness over time becomes chronic stress, which becomes burnout. Burnout doesn't just make you tired, it hollows you out. It takes away the motivation, the creativity, the care that made you effective in the first place. The irony is almost too painful. By refusing to let yourself rest properly, you are directly sabotaging the very performance you think the guilt is protecting. The guilt isn't making you more productive. It's slowly dismantling your ability to produce at all. The science of why rest isn't laziness. Here's something that might genuinely change how you feel about doing nothing. Your brain is actually never doing nothing. When you stop focused, directed activity, like when you close your laptop and stare out the window, your brain shifts into what neuroscientists call the default mode network. And the default mode network is not idle. It is extraordinarily active. This mode essentially processes experiences, makes sense of emotions, connects disparate ideas, and builds narratives. It is essentially problem solving beneath the surface. Some of the most creative insights in human history, Newton's apple, Archimedes in the bath, countless scientific breakthroughs, came not during focused work, but during rest, because the default mode network needs you to stop directing it before it can do its best work. Rest is not the absence of productivity. In many cases, rest is the most productive thing you can do. Athletes understand this instinctively. No serious training program has athletes performing at maximum intensity every single day. Recovery isn't a break from the training. Recovery is part of the training. The adaptation, the getting stronger, faster, better, happens during recovery, not during the session itself. The same is true for your mind. The insight, the clarity, the creativity, that doesn't come during the grind, it comes after it. Rest isn't a reward for hard work. It's the mechanism through which hard work actually pays off. Why some people rest without guilt, and what they know. So, why is it that some people seem to rest without any guilt at all? You've probably met someone like this. They take a day off and they genuinely enjoy it. They don't seem to be fighting an internal battle the whole time. What's different about them? In most cases, it comes down to one thing. They have decoupled their worth from their output. They don't feel less valuable as a human being when they're not producing. Their identity isn't dependent on their productivity score for the day. This is something that often comes with age, with therapy, with major life events that force a reset in priorities, but it can also be deliberately cultivated. The people who rest without guilt have usually done the internal work of answering a question that most of us quietly avoid. What am I worth when I'm not doing anything? And the honest, uncomfortable, liberating answer is the same as always. Your worth is not a function of your output. You are not a human doing. You are a human being. That sounds like a motivational poster, but living it, actually feeling it in your body when you sit down and do nothing, is one of the most quietly radical acts of self-respect you can practice. The people who rest without guilt aren't lazy. They're free. How to actually rest without the guilt. Okay, practical time. How do you actually do this? How do you rest without your brain turning it into a crime scene? Step 1. Schedule the rest intentionally. This sounds counterintuitive, but it works. Guilt thrives in unplanned space. When rest is unplanned, your brain frames it as stolen time, time that was supposed to go somewhere else. When rest is scheduled, when you look at your week and deliberately carve out Sunday afternoon as protected rest time, the brain frames it differently. It's not laziness, it's a commitment you're keeping. That reframe alone quietens the guilt significantly. Step 2. Define what rest actually means for you. Rest isn't one thing. For some people, it's silence. For others, it's a walk, a bath, a game, a conversation. The key is that it's genuinely restorative, not just a different form of stimulation. Scrolling social media is not rest. It's passive consumption that keeps your nervous system activated. Find the thing that actually lets your nervous system exhale. That's your rest. Step 3. Practice noticing the guilt without obeying it. When the guilt arrives, and it will, try not to immediately react to it. Just notice it. Name it. Oh, there's the productivity guilt again. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to fix it. You just don't have to obey it. Over time, the gap between feeling the guilt and acting on it gets wider, and in that gap is where genuine rest finally becomes possible. Step 4. Remind yourself what rest is for. Not for laziness, not for giving up, for coming back better. Every time you rest well, you are investing in the version of yourself that shows up tomorrow. That's not doing nothing, that's doing something essential. Recap time. Let's bring it all together. The guilt you feel when you rest is not the truth. It's conditioning, a program installed by a culture that confused output with worth. For many people, rest guilt runs even deeper, tied to identity, to the belief that their values disappears the moment they stop producing. Guilt during rest doesn't make you rest less. It makes you recover less. You lose the time and the restoration. Your brain during rest is doing some of its most important work: processing, connecting, restoring. Rest is not absence of productivity. It is a different kind of productivity. The people who rest without guilt have decoupled their worth from their output. That is a skill. It can be learned. Schedule the rest. Define what actually restores you. Notice the guilt without obeying it. And remember what rest is actually for. Here's your challenge this week. Block out 1 hour of intentional, guilt-free rest. No phone, no half watching something while mentally planning tomorrow, just actual rest. And when the guilt shows up, and it will, just say, I know what you are, and I'm resting anyway. Drop a comment telling me what your guilt-free rest actually looks like. Subscribe for more of this every week, and I'll see you in the next one.